Guys, today we're going to be looking at the second half of ancient Egyptian geography, and we're looking at those other geographic features today. So our supporting question is, what impact did other geographic features have on ancient Egyptian civilization? So the ancient Egyptians divided the land into black land and red land. The area where the flooding occurred, where that rich black soil came, that was brought in and created by silt, that was known as the black land. And because of that fertility, how fertile the land was, black then becomes synonymous with life, representing life, and it's going to be used in Egyptian art to represent life and especially afterlife. The surrounding area outside of the Nile River Valley is known as the Red Land because it's desert and the sands have a kind of reddish hue to them. Here's pictures you can see. Up here, this is the desert and the red land. Here on the lower left is the black land. And you can see from this aerial shot the Nile River Valley, how verdant it is. Look how green. You can see it from this satellite shot. Just the disparity, right? The fertile land, and then on either side of this is nothing but desert. So the Nile River is known as the giver and the taker of life. It's known as the giver of life because obviously it gives Egyptians a lot of things to survive. Fertile soil for farming, fishing, freshwater fowl for food, fresh water for drinking, transportation, and trade routes. All of those things are going to be used to unite ancient Egypt, so it's going to become a very strong civilization. And it's also known as the taker of life because people accidentally drowned during the flooding. Extreme rainfall could wash the crops away. If there was very light flooding, the soil wouldn't be replenished and then the crops wouldn't grow. So the Nile River to the ancient Egyptians was known as both the giver and the taker of life. And this is a very important concept. Make sure you understand this because it's bound to be on an assessment later on. So one of the other benefits that the ancient Egyptians had was Egypt had amazing natural barriers. And because they had these strong natural barriers, it made them very difficult to invade. So on either side of the Nile River Valley were these deserts, especially those deserts to the west. That's a huge, huge desert to the west, so that it makes it very difficult for any invaders to come from the west. Now they have the Mediterranean Sea to the north, they have the Red Sea to the east, so they also have these water barriers to protect them. And then along the river, people aren't able to navigate the river all the way because of those dangerous cataracts that we took a look at yesterday. And because the threat of invasion was so low because of these natural barriers, Egypt really coalesced and they developed a strong civilization. They developed that social hierarchy, which we're going to take a look at later in the week. And those villages that developed along the Nile River then started to band together and they became two kingdoms. They had Upper and the Lower Kingdom. The Upper Egypt, again, is in the southern part of the civilization, and Lower Egypt is to the north. And in the beginning, each of those kingdoms had their own king and their own way of life. We're going to see that the kingdoms are going to be unified later on. We'll be taking a look at that. So, when the civilization first started, the hunter-gatherers were drawn to the Nile River because obviously there was fish there to be caught, there was wildlife to be hunted, and as they started to settle down and to domesticate those crops, they then began to build these infrastructure projects. So they built irrigation systems, basins to collect the floodwaters, canals to attach those basins to the drier land and bring the irrigation water to the drier land during those drier months. And farmers grew wheat, barley, fruits and vegetables. They domesticated cattle and sheep. And they also fished along the Nile and used traps to catch waterfowl, such as geese and ducks that lived in the river as well. And here's an ancient artifact showing duck and waterfowl that are prevalent along the Nile River. So, the growth of Egypt really comes out of these two concepts, that the Nile River provides life because of that fertile soil for the crops and because of water. And the water allows for the irrigation, the water allows for people to consume it and animals as well. And then the second part of the geography is the natural barriers. And those natural barriers provided protection so that those civilizations could grow stronger and coalesce and develop. And those natural barriers were deserts, the cataracts or the waterfalls along the Nile, and then the bodies of water such as the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea. These two concepts helped the growth of ancient Egypt. So make sure you understand these two concepts that the geography provide. The Nile River, which provides life, and then those natural barriers that provide protection. And just, I want to end here with a little chart so that we can take a look at the Nile River as compared to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. So the differences are the Nile River had predictable flooding and gentler flooding patterns, whereas the Tigris and Euphrates River, their flooding was more destructive and unpredictable. Now, the similarities between the civilizations and the rivers, they both provided water. They both provided an opportunity for the people who live there to develop irrigation, those infrastructure projects to extend their growing regions and increase their crop production. Both have the soil which is enriched by silt, and both had great civilizations develop along the banks of their rivers. So that's a little tie-in to ancient Mesopotamia, which we just finished studying. And that's it. You're going to be working on a map activity. It's not this map activity specifically, but it's attached in the Google Classroom, so you're going to be working on that as well. And that's all for today. Thanks, guys.